Welcome to McMaster Minds, a podcast brought to you by McMaster University's undergraduate psychiatry program. This podcast will explore psychiatry training and the path to getting there through honest conversations with residents and staff. We hope this gives you a sense about the life of a psychiatry resident and staff psychiatrist, and that it helps you make the decision about whether psychiatry, and hopefully McMaster, is right for you.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Hassan, and welcome to our podcast. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Mahdi Hassan. I'm a fourth-year resident here in the psychiatry program, and I'm actually situated at the Waterloo Regional Campus.
And where did you attend medical school?
I went to medical school at McGill University in Montreal.
Awesome. And what rotation are you currently on?
So I'm currently on chronic care, which essentially is the part of the curriculum where you primarily work with the patient population that has severe and persistent mental illness. So individuals with like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or bipolar disorder. I'm particularly working at the Waterloo Regional Health Network, which is sort of a long word, but in their ACT team, so the assertive community treatment team. And so far, it's been really fun.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Could you tell us a bit about what drew you to psychiatry initially?
Yes, for sure. I always liked sharing that in the beginning of medical school. In where I went to medical school, it's a 4-year program, and for I would say like the half of the degree, I was gun-shot at going into dermatology. And I'd done all this research in dermatology. One of my closest mentors was a dermatologist. I was very grateful and like lucky to present at conferences and things like that. And then after going and actually doing my first elective in derm, I came to the conclusion that research in dermatology and the clinical practice were really different, and I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And that left me in this existential crisis in the middle of medical school. What will I do? I went and did an elective at that point in child psychiatry, and I really, really loved it. And that kind of was a process of elimination for me where I went on to do other rotations in psychiatry. And the thing about the psychiatry that really drew me in was that I found that every patient I met, even if they had the same condition, was really different. Like every case of depression was different. Every case of borderline personality was really different. And that uniqueness and individual experience of each of the patients made me almost like, on one level, never bored, and another level, deeply intrigued. And that's what got me into psychiatry and is keeping me going at this point.
Do you have any particular special interests within psychiatry?
Yes, I have many. My small group of like friends in psychiatry will probably be able to attest that I have like maybe a few too many social interests in psychiatry. But the one that I'd like to share about, or actually maybe two, one is geriatric psychiatry. So the study and the treatment of older adults who live with mental illness. This population for me has always been really, really interesting and a deeply enriching experience to work with people who are older adults. This goes back for me all the way until my undergraduate degree, where I was doing a minor in gerontology, which is the non-medical study of aging and older adulthood. What I love the most about geriatrics is that it just gives an opportunity to really meet people at a very pivotal point of their lives, when often there's a lot of role transition that's happening, going from being like a worker, like somebody in the working class, to someone who's retired, living with multiple generations, people having like peers who are older adults, maybe children, maybe grandchildren, and the rich interplay that happens at that point in one's life. In addition to that, geriatric psychiatry is probably one of these subspecialties in psychiatry where you get the most interplay between psychiatry and the other facets of medicine, be that neurology, family medicine, or internal medicine. And that for me was something that was also really enriching, that I would be able to continue to use the knowledge that I gained in medical school in these other fields and work in that kind of collaborative model. So for that reason, like I'm really interested in geriatrics, and I'll be actually starting my fellowship in July. So that's one field, but I can't go without talking about nutritional psychiatry, which is the treatment of mental illness using primarily dietary modifications. This is a really like nascent field that's originally kind of started in Australia with Dr. Jacka, as well as there's a doctor in Columbia University, New York City, called named Dr. Drew Ramsey, who also does a lot of work in nutritional psychiatry. I did my presentation on this for my grounds rounds last year, so I won't take an hour and a half to spiel to talk about it and almost rant. But it's really exciting, and there's lots of amazing RCTs that are coming out right now, showing how very specific changes in people's diets can actually go on to be a very effective treatment for moderate depression as well as other psychiatric illnesses.
Yeah, both of those are really fascinating, and congratulations on starting your fellowship. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And as this is a day in the life, we were hoping that you to jump right in and have you tell our listeners about what a typical day looks like for a psychiatry resident.
Yes, I will say that I'd be happy to do that. I am in PGY4, which now is the Royal College year in the residency program. So a lot of my time is dedicated to studying, as you will see, but we can kind of dive in together. Typically, my day starts around 7 a.m. or so. I'm currently, as I said, working in the ACT team. Our days are split between either doing clinics in an outpatient clinic or doing home visits for our patients. And most of those days start around 9 a.m. So I'll usually get to the clinic around 9 a.m. We'll go through, review some of the charts of some of the patients that we'll be seeing that day, and then start seeing patients actually at closer to 9:30. And then we usually have like a morning clinic where we have like back-to-back patients and SDM calls or calls to the substitute decision maker for patients who are deemed incapable. We usually do get a break for lunch that lasts around 40 minutes to an hour. And then that's followed up with an afternoon of clinic as well. After a clinic day is done, we usually every day we have a team meeting that lasts for about an hour and a half with the rest of the whole ACT team. And essentially, it's almost like internal medicine and these other specialties. We run the list. We actually go through every single patient that's on our roster and give updates about them because the patient population that we work with that have severe and persistent mental illness often are very dynamic. There's lots of things happening, different kind of contexts with respect to their housing, their medical ailments as well, and of course their ongoing psychiatric illnesses. And so then we run the list. We have that team meeting, and then that's the end of the day. I am in PGY4, as I said. This is the Royal College year, so about 2 to 3 nights a week I'm dedicating towards studying for the Royal College, and that kind of takes lots of different forms. And then, of course, if you're on call, one of those evenings or would generally be like dedicated towards doing the call shift.
I'm curious how you found juggling all of those responsibilities that come with residency.
Yeah, wellness is something that I think is, from my perspective, non-negotiable. The reason why is that residency, I perceive residency as really a marathon more than a sprint. It's a 5-year program in psychiatry, and if you do a fellowship, it's 6 years. So you really need to find a balance between your time in clinic, your on-call kind of responsibilities, research responsibilities, and a number of other things that are occurring within the curriculum, including psychotherapy, and balancing that with activities that you know that you need to stay well. For example, I about 2 to 4 times a week, I dedicate about an hour and a half to just exercise. I'll go to the gym. I'll do like some aerobic exercises, some anaerobic exercises. Earlier on in my residency program, I would sometimes like not take that seriously and then go for weeks without it. And typically I'd find that I did feel a lot worse and like my mood was a bit lower. I felt a lot more sluggish. I didn't have so much energy. But when I came to understand that like that thing is like my staying physically active is actually extremely important for me to go on and live the other parts of my life well. I just put it into my schedule as like a non-negotiable almost and have it there all the time. And I think in that way, when you put in the things that you know you need, like time with family and friends, times to exercise and move, time to cook and like eat, like create meals that you are actually happy to eat and they're full of the right types of nutrients. This really, I think, bolsters a sense of wellness and allows you to keep going when times get hard or busy.
With your clinical responsibilities, especially for those who like sleep, how do you, rather, what is the expectation for you in residency regarding having to work overnight or doing call?
So I was really looking forward to talking about this because as a resident at the Waterloo Regional Campus, our call schedule is actually different from our colleagues who are in the program but in Hamilton. So in the Waterloo Regional Campus, our call schedules are considered technically home call. And what that means is that there is no expectation for you to do consults throughout the night, and our call shifts end at 11 p.m. So a typical day on call at our campus would be you'd finish your clinical activities around 4 o'clock, and you would then head to the hospital to see any consults that were pending. You would go on to see consults like throughout the evening from around 4 p.m. to around 11. 11 is really the cutoff. So we usually try to wrap up our last consult at around 10 p.m. to give us time for documentation. At that point, you go back home, you sleep in your own bed, and the expectation then is for you to go the next day back to your clinical responsibilities as regularly scheduled. The positive side of that is that if you like sleeping in your own bed, like I do, you get normal sleep. You're not sleeping in a call room. That can be of varying sort of like comfort levels. However, you don't get a post-call day. And that's like a major difference between the two strands of the program, but something that I deeply enjoy. There is a caveat. When you're on PGY1 and you're doing mostly off-service rotations, in particular internal medicine, there is an expectation for you to be doing overnight call, and you have, I don't remember the frequency exactly, but you have very regular calls that are overnight. However, as I said, you do get the post-call day, so the following day you would not come into the hospital, but the day after that you would.
Got it. That's really interesting component of the Waterloo program. Related to that point, I'm curious if there's anything else in your daily residency life that was also surprising or that maybe you weren't anticipating.
One thing that was really surprising to me, on one hand, about the Waterloo Regional Campus is that because it's like the regional campus is more of a community site than it is a purely academic site. And what I mean by that is that the types of people that you're engaging with, you're not really in a busy city with like lots of things going on. And that actually translates to your relationship with your preceptors as well. I think preceptors both in Hamilton and Waterloo are fantastic. And I've done a couple of rotations in Hamilton as well. However, in Waterloo, there's this more collegial kind of relationship that you have your preceptors, just because there are a lot less learners who are there often. And so often it's just you and your supervisor, and sometimes there's a medical student as well. But the teams are a lot more small. You get to know people a lot better. And a lot of the preceptors who work in the region actually graduated from the program in the region as well. So there's this like generational kind of like transference that's occurring at the same time. So that's like one big difference that I found in this part of the program, which was something very different from where I went to medical school.
To that point, then I wonder, what is your favorite part of psychiatry residency so far?
There are so many points to choose from. And what comes to mind right now, and like all good psychiatrists, I will answer the question in a story. So I was recently at a conference for geriatric psychiatry a couple of weeks ago in Calgary. And while I was there were these like learner kind of centric sessions in which residents as well as fellows were given time to sort of like spend time together and go through topics and kind of like exchange knowledge on specific topics. And that was something I found deeply enriching. And in light of that, what I found that I enjoy a lot in psychiatry residency that I didn't know I was going to enjoy as much is sort of that relationship that exists within peers and amongst other residents. Your rotations will always be a little bit different. And especially if you're doing similar rotations at the same time, but in different sites, you might have a different experience. However, that sense of togetherness and camaraderie that can form between you and your peers, I think is one of the most enriching parts of this program. And to that end, our program at McMaster is not like really large and it's also not very small. And so we sit really in that middle for a middle-sized program. So most people know most people, especially within a PGY year. And true friendships and relationships are allowed to and almost encouraged to flourish.
Dr. Hassan, we're coming up to about the end of our time together today, so we'll just have a couple more questions to wrap things up. Do you have any advice for budding psychiatry residents who might be among our listeners today?
Yes. So I shared this advice that I actually got from one of my mentors when I was considering what would be the right specialty for me. And they shared that the two things that you should always kind of be looking out for when you're looking to figure out if this is the right specialty for you or not is on one hand, what do you like doing? And I know that's like a big open question, right? But there are some rotations and some specialties that when you start actually like doing an elective there, you might find that you really enjoy it so much that you could probably like you would like to do it. And you would like to the extreme, it could go to the point of like you would do it for free. Like you like there's some sort of intrinsic pleasure that you get from doing this type of work. And if you find that in psychiatry, I think that just shows you that psychiatry is for you. The other piece of advice that my mentor had given me was that looking out for the types of people that are in certain specialties can go a far way. And sometimes when you're working within a specialty and you find that the people that you're working with and yourself really align in a very deep way, that might be a sign that like that's the specialty for you. He kind of summarized it with a find your people kind of adage, but there is a truth to that, and specialties kind of do attract people of different personality structures to some extent.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really profound and helpful advice as we're trying to figure out our way forward. I guess also to that point, then, what is something that you wish you knew about psychiatry before you began residency?
One thing I wish I knew was just how vast psychiatry is. I like coming and now going through the program, I've learned about so many different, yes, there are those like Royal College accredited subspecialties, but there are just like specific areas of interest as well. And at places like McMaster, like you can find people who are interested in all types of like sub fields within psychiatry. One area that I was not really aware of at all was sort of like the peripartum part of psychiatry, and specifically trying to support women who are experiencing mental health challenges in the context of around the moment of birth, either like right after birth or right beforehand. And there was a whole skew of psychiatrists who like do research on this, have published lots of papers about this, and actually run clinics to support this really important field and patient group. So I would say that one thing I wish I knew was that psychiatry is so vast and that it's really important to try to expose yourself to as much as you can so that you can find the part of psychiatry that kind of speaks to you the most.
And then you had mentioned before that you had gone to McGill for medical school. So I'm curious what it was like for you moving to Ontario for residency from the different province.
Yeah, moving to a new province for residency was a bit of a process just because having lived in Quebec for multiple years and done a number of different psychiatry rotations there, a lot of the terms around mental health law were just different in Ontario. Um, as a comparison, there are no forms in Quebec. Like every form actually has a name, and it's a whole name, and you have to know it. So you can't just refer to it as like formulaire 1 or something. It's not called a form one. It has a whole name, and for that reason, learning these numbers and what they mean and things like that was a bit different. However, it was like a learning curve that I think has only enriched my overall knowledge of psychiatry. On top of that, I think moving was interesting in that like different provinces have different cultures, but overall I found that my time at Master that I feel very like well sort of welcomed by the program and really held, and a number of the residents in kind of upper years from me like really helped me kind of adjust to life in Ontario, and it's been great.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. That takes us to just about the end of our time together. Before we go, do you have any parting comments that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes, the last thing I would like to share is that if you're really interested in psychiatry and you're considering this, I think the best way a human can learn really is experientially. So I highly recommend that you go out, like do electives in psychiatry, do them in different contexts, different hospital settings, different clinical settings, and see kind of the wide breadth that we had been discussing. And if you're interested in psychiatry as well, I'd recommend like reaching out to somebody who is a psychiatrist and see maybe if you could form like a mentorship relationship with them. Because even if you don't go into psychiatry, I'm sure that relationship will be something that deeply enriches your life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Hassan.
Thank you, Faisal.